LinkedIn's vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And this vision is particularly important during times of change, like we find ourselves in now with the existential threat of the climate crisis. We are committed to helping individuals, including job seekers, as well as organizations, meet this moment. And one of the ways in which we do this is by openly and regularly sharing data from the LinkedIn platform on what is going on in the global economy, and specifically around this green economic transition. LinkedIn's economic graph is a rich, unique data set updated in nearly real time from over 1 billion LinkedIn members in over 200 countries and territories, 67 million companies, and a taxonomy of over 41,000 skills. For the last several years, we have been drawing on this data to look at progress and trends related to the green transition. Every year, we publish a global green skills report, which looks at, you guessed it, green skills, as well as green jobs, jobs that require these skills, and green talent, workers with these skills. This past fall, we conducted a special analysis, this report on the right, the green gender gap, to look at women's role in the green transition. Now, we conducted this analysis for 3 reasons. The first is that we know that we need to leverage the full power of humankind to meet this moment, and that we wanted to look at our labor disparities we're seeing in other parts of the economy coming over into the green economy when it comes to gender. The second reason we conducted this analysis is that we see from previous research that green skills are in demand, and we wanted to look at are women missing out on new economic opportunity. And lastly, women are often the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and we believe that they should be leading the charge in climate action. Today, I will share some findings from this report, as well as reflections on what we can all do to ensure a more equitable transition. Green skills are in demand, as I just referenced. When I talk about green skills, when LinkedIn talks about green skills, we're referring to a diverse array of skills related to environmental sustainability. This ranges from the highly technical, think chemistry for battery manufacturing, as well as more corporate skills like carbon accounting as more companies try to reduce their Scope 3 emissions. We found that there is a green skills shortage in every country and in every industry that we looked at. As you can see on these 2 figures, while last year the proportion of green talent grew by 12%, these are workers who are acquiring these in-demand skills, the job postings requiring those skills grew by nearly double, at 22%. Essentially, we have a supply and demand problem. Put another way, globally, only 1 in 8 workers have any green skills. And critically, the skills shortage is happening at a time where green hiring is surging. In fact, last year, green hiring outpaced overall hiring by 44%. So we can see green jobs are not just great for the planet, they're also resilient jobs. Even more reason we need to pick up the pace in getting more people into climate jobs and ensure that everyone is having access to this new opportunity. Unfortunately, we see that women are already being left out of this transition. While women are underrepresented across the entire labor market in many industries, this is particularly pronounced with green. We found that women only make up roughly 1/3 of global green talent, or workers who have any green skills. Now, since 2021, this vertical dotted line, we see that women actually are gaining green skills faster than men. While this is fantastic news, the gender gap has actually increased 25% over the last 7 years, and women would need to learn green skills 2.5 times faster than they are today to close this gap. Now, we can't build this green economy without half of the workforce and half the population, especially when women are underrepresented in some of the most critical industries to meet our climate goals. The next few slides, I'll do a deep dive in what we looked at for renewable energy. We find that renewable energy, perhaps unsurprisingly given the 33% stat I just showed you, that only 34% of the renewable energy workforce are women. And we looked at renewable energy for a few reasons. The 2 most important being that is very critical to the green transition, but also it's very quickly growing. There's a lot of demand and a lot of opportunity for workers. There are many possible reasons why women are not at par in the renewable energy industry in terms of the workforce. One reason we looked at is skills. Men are much more likely to have relevant green skills for the renewable energy industry, such as renewable energy management and other similar skills. But they're also 3 times more likely to have relevant cross-functional STEM skills. Think manufacturing, maintenance, and repair. Now we go a little deeper into leadership. We can see that women are holding just 21% of leadership roles in renewable energy. Essentially, there's a green ceiling within renewables. And while women are underrepresented overall in leadership positions, for example, only 27% of vice president roles are held by women globally, and only 25% of C-suite roles are held by women. This gap is more pronounced in renewables, where only 20% of vice presidents are women and 21% of the C-suite are women. The gap is actually most pronounced in solar, where we see vice presidents in solar, only 15% are women, and only 13% of C-suite of solar companies are women. Another dimension we looked at, third dimension, is around entrepreneurship. To meet the climate crisis, we're going to need a lot of innovation, a lot of ingenuity, and we're going to need founders. We're going to need entrepreneurs. Now, women, similar to the previous slides, they're facing a lot of barriers with entrepreneurship overall, and once again, this is most pronounced in renewables. Women only make up 22% of founders in the renewable energy industry. Now, this is actually in contradiction with some of the broader trends we're seeing. So over the last 5 years, we see that women founders grew from 27% to 30%. We're actually seeing some strides made around female founders. But renewables, in that same 5-year period, has been stuck at 22%. We actually are not seeing any progress made there. Now, a few countries, the first 3 on this chart, actually bucked this trend. So you see Peru, Colombia, and Singapore, interestingly, have a higher proportion of women founders in renewables than they do in other industries. The US is closer to the global. So there are 33% of general founders are women, and in renewables, that number goes down to 20% are female founders. Now, there are some bright spots. As the workforce is developing, women are leading the charge in a few key important areas. For example, we find that women are 64% more likely to have skills related to sustainable education. Women are 20% more likely to have skills related to sustainable development and the circular economy. And in countries like Australia, France, Germany, and New Zealand, women are actually up to 80% more likely to have sustainable procurement skills, which is one of the most rare and highly in-demand green skills we see on LinkedIn. Another key point that we saw here is that women are actually greening some more traditionally carbon-intensive industries. So, for example, women overall have many more green skills than men in the oil and gas industry. And at entry level, so when women are joining oil and gas companies, they have 3x as many green skills as their male counterparts. We actually see a similar trend in utilities, where women have 71% more green skills than men in entry level, and 43% more green skills at mid-level, suggesting that perhaps if women were given more opportunities to rise the ranks in some of these carbon-intensive industries, they could bring those green skills with them. Now, while a lot of this data is challenging, there are a few actions that policymakers, organizations, and businesses can take to address these disparities. I'll briefly touch on 3. One is, as nations, as states, cities, et cetera, start setting green skilling targets, to also include gender targets in that. So the saying goes, if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. The second is, for all the organizations, educational programs that are already focusing on getting more women and girls into STEM, to start incorporating green career exploration and green skilling programming into those STEM programs. And lastly, to create more professional networks for women in climate careers, including connecting more women with investors as they try to start their own climate companies. I wanted to end this presentation by sharing a few examples of some fantastic organizations and fantastic women who I've highlighted on this slide that are taking action to be part of the solution in climate change. The first is Generation Spain, which is helping women like Trinidad here on the left access free training and paid internships in the renewable energy sector. Another one is INCO Academy, which is helping women like Gloria here in the center to use her STEM skills to do her job in a more sustainable way. And Elemental Accelerator, through their EDICT program, is helping women like Palak use their STEM degrees to become leaders in climate companies and give them access to rich networks. I want to express my deep appreciation to all of these organizations and the many others who are focusing on this really important issue. And lastly, it's been an absolute pleasure sharing these insights, even though a lot of this data is very sobering and challenging. I wanted to quote esteemed climate scientist Dr. Katharine Hayhoe, who said, "What do you need to solve the climate crisis? The answer is everyone." Thank you.
Thanks, Jana. What a way to end. Just for the record, we measure carefully our guests on Climate One, and we're pretty consistently at least 50% or more women on the show. So, which, as you've just seen, that's more women that they're in leadership positions. So thank you for joining us on day 2. We hope you come back on Thursday. We have the Lieutenant Governor, a couple of state senators talking about the California budget, a lot more, head of the California Chamber of Commerce. Want to hear what they have to say. And then we also have the fashion show on Friday. Now I invite you to check out the Action Lounge out there. And I want to give a special shout out to Chris Dobson and Leonard Adler, who've helped curate the Action Lounge, which might know if there's still action out there. We'll see. But thank you all for coming. Hope to see you on Thursday. Thanks for being part of Climate One. Bye-bye.